Claire's life was hard. Every day felt like a battle. She lived in a small, old cabin on the edge of a snowy town with her 7-year-old daughter, Lily. Money was always tight. Claire worked long hours cleaning houses and running errands just to put food on the table and keep the heat on during the freezing winters. Lily was her light. Despite their struggles, the little girl had a big smile and endless energy. She loved playing outside in the snow, building forts, and imagining adventures. But even Lily noticed how tired her mom looked sometimes. One evening, a fierce snowstorm hit the town. The wind howled, and thick flakes piled up outside. Claire sat by the fire, mending clothes while Lily colored pictures at the table. "I'm cold, Mommy," Lily said, wrapping herself in a thin blanket. Claire sighed and added another log to the fire. "We'll be okay, sweetheart. Just stay close to the fire." But as the storm raged on, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't just the cold, it was the silence outside. No cars, no voices, nothing but the sound of the wind. She decided to check on their animals. They had a few chickens and a goat in a shed behind the house. The animals were their lifeline. If they got sick or hurt, it would mean even more trouble for the family. Bundling up in her patched-up coat, Claire stepped out into the storm. The snow was knee-deep, and the icy wind bit at her face. As she trudged toward the shed, she heard something faint, a whimper, almost lost in the wind. At first, she thought it was one of the animals. But then she saw him, a boy, no older than 10, huddled under a tree, shivering uncontrollably. His expensive coat and boots stood out against the barren woods, but his face was pale with fear. "Hey!" Claire called, rushing to him. "Are you okay?" The boy looked up, his eyes wide. I'm lost," he stammered through chattering teeth. Without hesitation, Claire scooped him up. He was freezing and weak, but alive. "Don't worry," she said softly. "You're safe now." Carrying him back to the cabin, Claire didn't stop to think about who he might be or why he was there. All she knew was that no child should be out in this storm alone. Little did she know, bringing him home would change everything. Back at the cabin, Claire laid the boy down on a makeshift bed near the fire. His lips were blue, and his body trembled from the cold. She quickly wrapped him in blankets and handed him a cup of hot tea. "Drink this," she urged gently. "It'll help warm you up." The boy obeyed, sipping slowly. After a few minutes, color began to return to his face. He glanced around the room, taking in the simple furniture and flickering flames. "Where am I?" he asked softly. "You're safe," Claire replied. "My name's Claire, and this is my daughter, Lily." Lily peeked out from behind her mom, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Hi," she said shyly. The boy managed a weak smile. "I'm Ethan." Claire nodded. "Well, Ethan, you're lucky I found you out there. Do you remember how you ended up in the woods?" Ethan hesitated, looking down at the blanket. I got lost. My family was skiing and I wandered off. Then the storm came, and I couldn't find my way back." Claire frowned. "Skiing? That didn't sound like something people around here did. Most folks in their town could barely afford groceries, let alone fancy vacations." But she didn't press him further. He was already scared enough. Over the next few hours, Claire kept the fire roaring and gave Ethan some soup to eat. Slowly, he started to relax. Lily stayed close, chatting about her drawings and asking if Ethan wanted to play games. "You're really nice," Ethan said after a while, glancing at Claire. "Why are you helping me?" Claire smiled faintly. "Because it's the right thing to do. Everyone deserves a little kindness, especially when they're in trouble." That night, as Ethan drifted off to sleep, Claire sat by the fire, thinking, who was this boy? Why had no one come looking for him yet? And what would happen once the storm passed? Despite her questions, Claire felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in weeks, her worries about rent and bills faded into the background. Helping Ethan reminded her of why she worked so hard, to make the world just a little brighter, even if only for one person. The next morning, the snowstorm showed no signs of stopping. Ethan seemed stronger, though still quiet. He helped Lily build a tiny fort out of pillows and laughed when she crowned him king of the cabin. Watching them play, Claire realized how much joy Ethan brought to their humble home. It wasn't just his gratitude, it was the way he fit in like he belonged. But deep down, Claire knew this couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, Ethan's family would come looking for him. And when they did, life would go back to the way it was before, or so she thought. What Claire didn't realize was that saving Ethan wasn't just an act of kindness. It was the beginning of something extraordinary. Over the next few days, Ethan settled into life at the cabin. The snowstorm showed no sign of letting up, so Claire decided it was best to keep him safe until the roads cleared. To her surprise, Ethan didn't complain about the lack of modern comforts. No TV, no internet, not even a proper bed. Instead, he seemed fascinated by their simple way of living. Lily adored having a big brother around. She dragged Ethan into all her games, from building snowmen outside to baking cookies in the tiny kitchen. Claire watched with a smile as Ethan laughed and played, his earlier fear melting away. "You're good with her," Claire remarked one evening as they sat by the fire. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Ethan shrugged, poking at the embers with a stick. "I've always wanted a little sister," he admitted quietly. Claire tilted her head, curious. "What about your family? Don't you have siblings?" Ethan hesitated before shaking his head. "No, it's just me and my dad. And sometimes it feels like he's too busy for me." His words tugged at Claire's heart. She knew what it was like to feel invisible, to be surrounded by people yet still alone. "Well, you've got us now," she said warmly. "At least until the storm passes." Ethan looked up, his eyes soft with gratitude. "Thank you, Claire, for everything." As the days went by, Claire noticed small changes in Ethan. He started helping with chores, stacking firewood and feeding the animals. Once, he even surprised her by fixing a broken chair using tools he found in the shed. "You're full of surprises," Claire teased as she watched him hammer the last nail into place. Ethan grinned. "My dad says I'm good with my hands. He wants me to take over his business someday." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Your dad must be pretty important if he has a business big enough to pass down." Ethan nodded but quickly changed the subject, clearly uncomfortable talking about his family. Claire didn't push him. She figured he'd share more when he was ready. Despite their growing bond, Claire couldn't shake the nagging worry in the back of her mind. Who was this boy? Why hadn't anyone come looking for him yet? And what would happen once the storm ended and he left? For now, though, she pushed those thoughts aside. All that mattered was keeping Ethan safe and giving him a little happiness while he was here. What Claire didn't know was that help was already on the way, and it would bring changes neither of them could have imagined. While Claire and Ethan bonded in the warmth of the cabin, miles away, chaos reigned. Gregory Hartley, a billionaire businessman and Ethan's father, was beside himself with worry. It had been 3 days since Ethan disappeared during their family ski trip. Gregory had hired search teams, offered massive rewards for information, and even appeared on local news begging for help. But so far, there had been no sign of his son. The guilt gnawed at him. He'd been distracted during the vacation, answering calls, checking emails, putting work ahead of spending time with Ethan. Now, every second without his boy felt like punishment for his neglect. "I should have been watching him," Gregory muttered to his assistant, pacing back and forth in his hotel suite. "What kind of father am I?" "We'll find him, Mr. Hartley," the assistant assured him. "Every lead is being followed. There's still hope." Just then, a private investigator burst into the room, clutching a folder. "Sir, we might have something." Gregory froze. "What is it?" One of the locals reported seeing a woman carrying a boy matching Ethan's description near her property during the storm, the investigator explained. Security footage from a nearby gas station confirms a child fitting Ethan's clothes entering the area before the storm hit. "Where is this place?" Gregory demanded, already grabbing his coat. "It's about 2 hours from here, a small town called Willow Creek. The woman's name is Claire Bennett." Without another word, Gregory raced to his car, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. For the first time in days, He allowed himself to believe that Ethan might still be alive. When Gregory arrived in Willow Creek, the sight of Claire's modest cabin nearly stopped him in his tracks. How could someone living in such simplicity afford to take care of his son? Doubts crept in, but he pushed them aside. All that mattered was finding Ethan. Knocking on the door, Gregory braced himself for what awaited him. When Claire opened it, her wary expression softened slightly as she saw the desperation in his eyes. "Are you Claire Bennett?" Gregory asked, his voice trembling. "Yes," Claire replied cautiously. "Who are you?" "My name is Gregory Hartley. I'm Ethan's father." Claire's eyes widened in shock. Before she could respond, a voice called out from inside the cabin. "Dad!" Ethan appeared in the doorway, his face lighting up with disbelief and joy. Without hesitation, he ran straight into Gregory's arms. Gregory hugged him tightly, tears streaming down his face. "I thought I'd lost you," he choked out. Claire watched the reunion, her heart swelling with relief and sadness. She knew this moment meant Ethan would leave, taking a piece of her world with him. But as Gregory turned to thank her, she realized this wasn't the end of their story. It was just the beginning. As Gregory held Ethan tightly, he couldn't stop the tears from falling. For days he had imagined the worst. Now, seeing his son safe and sound felt like a miracle. But as his eyes met Claire's, another wave of emotion hit him. Overwhelming gratitude. "Thank you," Gregory said, his voice thick with emotion. "If it weren't for you—" He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Claire shook her head modestly. "I didn't do anything special. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Gregory insisted firmly. "Not everyone would risk their own comfort, or even their safety, for a stranger. What you've done, it's extraordinary." Ethan tugged on his father's sleeve. "Dad, she saved me. And Lily's really fun too. We played games every day." Gregory smiled faintly at his son's enthusiasm but turned serious as he studied Claire. Her worn coat, the patched furniture inside the cabin. It all spoke volumes about her life. Yet despite her struggles, she had opened her home to someone in need without hesitation. "I want to repay you," Gregory said finally. "Please, tell me how I can thank you properly." Claire hesitated, taken aback by the offer. "You don't owe me anything," she replied softly. "I just did what was right." "But I insist," Gregory pressed. "You've given me my son back. Let me give something to you in return." Before Claire could protest further, Lily appeared beside her, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Does this mean Ethan has to leave now?" she asked, her voice tinged with sadness. Gregory knelt down to her level, smiling gently. "Yes, sweetheart. But we'll never forget what you and your mom have done for us." Claire glanced at Ethan, who looked torn between excitement about going home and reluctance to leave the little family he'd grown fond of. She forced a smile, trying to hide the ache in her chest. "It's okay," she told Lily softly. "We knew he couldn't stay forever." Gregory stood up, his expression resolute. "Claire, please, let me help you. You deserve more than this." For the first time, Claire allowed herself to consider his words. Maybe, just maybe, this was an opportunity to change not just her life, but Lily's future as well. "Okay," she said quietly, "but only if it's on my terms." Gregory nodded eagerly. Anything. What started as a simple act of kindness was about to transform into something far greater, for both Claire and Gregory. The next morning, Gregory returned to the cabin with a plan. He wasn't just there to express gratitude. He wanted to make sure Claire and Lily never struggled again. "I've been thinking," he began as they sat by the fire sipping coffee. "You've done so much for my family, and I want to do something meaningful for yours. Let me help you move into a better place. A home where you don't have to worry about staying warm or putting food on the table." Claire hesitated, her pride warring with practicality. "I appreciate it, but I don't want charity. We've managed fine until now." "It's not charity," Gregory insisted. "Think of it as an investment in your strength, your kindness, and your resilience. You've reminded me what truly matters in life. Let me give you the tools to build a brighter future for yourself and Lily." He went on to explain his idea: paying off Claire's debts, helping her secure a stable job, and ensuring Lily had access to better education and opportunities. But why? Claire asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Why would you do all this for strangers? Because you saved my son, Gregory replied simply. And because meeting you has changed how I see the world. People like you, hardworking, compassionate, selfless, they're the ones who keep humanity alive. I want to honor that. Tears welled up in Claire's eyes, but she nodded slowly. If it helps Lily, then yes. Thank you. Over the following weeks, Gregory kept his promises. He paid off Claire's debts, found her a cozy apartment closer to town, and even arranged for Lily to attend a top-rated school. For the first time in years, Claire felt a weight lift from her shoulders. But Gregory didn't stop there. Inspired by Claire's generosity, he launched a foundation dedicated to supporting struggling families in rural areas. Claire became one of its earliest advisors, sharing her experiences to shape programs that could help others like her. Through it all, their bond grew stronger. What started as gratitude evolved into mutual respect, and eventually friendship. Gregory learned humility and compassion from Claire, while she gained confidence and hope for the future. Neither of them could have predicted how saving Ethan would bring them together, or how much they'd change each other's lives along the way. Months later, Claire stood in the doorway of their new apartment, watching Lily play with her toys. The sun streamed through the windows, warming the cozy space filled with second-hand furniture they'd carefully chosen together. It wasn't luxurious, but it was theirs, a fresh start made possible by kindness and gratitude. Lily giggled as she built a tower out of colorful blocks. "Mommy, look how tall it is." Claire smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. They were safe now, happy, and for the first time, she dared to dream about what the future might hold. Not just survival, but possibilities. That evening, Gregory visited them at the apartment. He brought pizza and stories from his travels, where he'd been spreading the word about his new foundation. "You should have seen the families we helped last week," Gregory said, his eyes lighting up. "It's amazing what a little support can do." "I still can't believe you started all this because of us," Claire admitted, shaking her head in awe. "Don't underestimate the power of your example," Gregory replied warmly. "You reminded me that success isn't about money. It's about making a difference." As the three of them sat around the table laughing and sharing stories, Claire realized something profound. Saving Ethan hadn't just changed his life or hers. It had sparked a chain reaction of hope and generosity that reached far beyond any of them. Later, after Gregory left, Claire tucked Lily into bed. The little girl yawned sleepily, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Do you miss Ethan?" Lily asked softly. "Sometimes," Claire admitted. "But I'm glad he's happy and safe. And who knows, maybe one day we'll see him again." After turning off the light, Claire stepped onto the small balcony outside their apartment. The night sky stretched endlessly above her, dotted with stars. She thought about how far they'd come, from struggling to survive in a drafty cabin to building a brighter future together. She thought about Gregory, whose life she'd touched without even realizing it. Most of all, she thought about the simple act of kindness that had set everything in motion. A single moment of compassion had transformed not just her life, but countless others. And as she gazed at the stars, Claire felt certain of one thing. No matter how hard life got, there would always be room for hope, and for miracles born from love. If you've watched this far, chances are you've been touched by Claire's journey too. Maybe it made you think about a time when someone helped you, or perhaps inspired you to lend a hand to someone else. The truth is, we all have the power to make a difference, no matter how small it may seem at the time. So here's my question for you. What act of kindness will you carry forward after hearing this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear how this resonated with you. And if you enjoyed this heartfelt tale, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. Stories that remind us of our shared humanity, inspire hope, and celebrate the beauty of compassion. By subscribing, you'll join a community of people who believe in the power of storytelling to spark change and connection. Thank you for watching, and remember, The next time life gives you a chance to be kind, take it. You never know whose world you might change, including your own. Red Heart, Snowflake,